Now we're turning to sunk costs. So the biggest thing you want to take away from this video is what's written on the title slide here. Title of the slide here is that sunk costs do not matter for decision making, right? Sunk costs do not matter for decision making. So anytime you see a sunk cost, assume that producers are ignoring it, right? Because that's the big assumption that we're making. Sunk costs are the costs that once paid cannot be recovered. So there's a cliche or saying that there's no crying over spilled milk. This is essentially saying that when costs are sunk, don't let them affect you, right? The milk's already spilled, you can't get it back, right? So when we're thinking about the context of firm decision making, the fixed costs that we will include in our total cost equation are our sunk costs. In this scenario, right, again, focusing on firm decision making on production, fixed costs are going to be any cost that's spent on capital in the short run. All right, so there's only fixed costs in the short run. All right, so fixed costs are short run specific, and they're going to involve any spending on capital goods. So some examples here is going to be what a firm pays to rent out a building, right? What they've paid for any sort of durable equipment or machinery, what they've paid to secure operating permits. If you're a restaurant and you've printed your menus, right, that's going to be a fixed cost. You can't get those back. Any fees for licenses, long-term contracts, right? Any spending on signs, uniforms, etc. So anything that you've spent money on that has been undertaken by the firm and cannot be recovered. All right, that cannot be recovered is key. All right, so because they can't be recovered, firms are just going to ignore it, right? If a restaurant is considering how to update their menu prices, they're not thinking about what it cost them to print the previous menu, or at least they shouldn't be in the long run, right? If a firm is deciding whether or not to leave a market, right, or shut down, what's not going to factor in is how much they've paid already for the rent, right? They're just going to think about what costs they will continue to take on should they continue to operate. Okay? In scenarios where people let sunk costs affect their decision making, we call this the sunk cost fallacy. So one of the perennial examples of this is when someone goes to the movie. Maybe you've picked out you want to see Nosferatu or The Substance over the break, and you went to the theater, and let's say you went to see The Substance and you didn't realize how gross it was going to be, and you just don't have the stomach for it, but you stay anyways because you've already spent money on the ticket, right? So in that case, you're allowing the cost that you've already incurred, the price of the ticket, to keep you sitting there, exposing yourself to this gross movie you don't like, even though you could leave and do something that you prefer, right? Maybe you could go see another movie, or maybe you could meet up with friends or go out to eat or whatever it might be. There's an innumerable number of options that you could do besides continuing to sit there and dealing with this gross film. So again, sunk costs are not going to matter for decision making. Only opportunity costs will. So only opportunity costs matter. Sunk costs do not. This slide is detailing the example I've just given, right? If you're enjoying a movie, if you're not enjoying the movie, the decision to stay or leave should not depend on the price of the ticket. Instead, you should think about what you could be doing instead during that time. So let's look at an example. So Erin wants to become a marathon runner. She bought some running shoes for $100 and entered a marathon race that had a $40 entry fee. She's now on mile 10 of 26, and she is exhausted and is thinking about dropping out of the race and going home. If she drops out, the taxi ride home is going to cost her $125. When she's making her final decision, should Erin consider all of these costs? One of them, what, right? What cost should she consider when deciding whether or not to drop out of the race? So what we need to do is identify which of these three costs are opportunity costs and which are sunk costs, right? So remember, sunk costs, she's already paid and she cannot recover them. So the $100 she paid for her shoes, she's already run 10 miles of them in them. She can't take them back. That is a sunk cost. So she's not going to consider those costs in her decision. The $40 entry fee, right? She can't get that back. She's already started running the race. So that is a sunk cost. So we're going to eliminate both of those options. All right. Lastly, we're left with the cost of the taxi ride home, which she has not incurred yet. And so that is her opportunity cost, right? She could either continue running the race and not spend the $125 on a taxi, or she could stop running the race that she's really not enjoying and go home for that $125 amount. All right, that's all for sunk costs. Next, we're going to look at the firm's expansion path in the next video.